Pew pew pew! So this is the pulley crossbow. It reloads like... and it's rather special. Very special. I've got blood bolts currently equipped, and as you might imagine, it shooting 3 times is pretty good for blood build-up. However, there is a powerful secret to it. So we go to the giant and we shoot him in the back while he's completely defenseless, and it takes 2 rounds of 3 or 6 to give him a bleed. Nice. However, what happens if we, I don't know, chilling mist our right-hand weapon and then fire the blood bolts? So, 1 round, and again, nothing happens yet, as we saw. 2nd round, and... oh! Frost and bleed? It gets better. Bloodflame. Bleed on top of bleed. Bolts that apply bleed and then apply stacking up bleed, as well as fire damage. Oh! 1 bleed per shot. Oh yes, who just got excited? So let's whip up a build, buff ourselves to the maximum, and make this crossbow sing. We want to get close to the giant, so our Bloodlords and White Mask activates when the bleed does, and I wonder just how much damage we can do in simply 2 pulls of the trigger. This is seriously awesome. Hello, my fellow Tarnished. I realize I got maybe uncharacteristically straight to the point there, but I think straight to the point is right, because for some reason, crossbows, when you fire them in your left hand with a buffed, coated weapon in your right, the bolts, no matter which ones they are, will take on the properties of your coated weapon. Clearly, this isn't exactly intended, but the thing is, normally I wouldn't bring you a focused build on something that I kind of believe to be, I guess, literally broken, but crossbows are really kind of weak. They're good for status application, but damage output, actual usefulness, not really. They're a backup weapon. You pull them out, you get some niche usage out of them, but you can't really use them as a main offensive force, which is a shame, because crossbows are fun. I honestly do miss power stancing crossbows. But with this little technique, suddenly you can make them your main focus. You can properly do a crossbow build, and it's really not too strong, it's just nicely strong. So of course you could do poison, you could do rot, any single weapon buff. You could add just elemental damage in lightning, or indeed holy. But I think Bloodflame is the way, and pulley crossbow certainly the way too. It is located from the Craftsman's Shack in Mount Gelmir, and if you want to know specifically where, this guy. I'm sorry. It is the unique crossbow that does fire 3 bolts at once, which chews through your ammo, but it means every single bolt is doing blood loss build-up and applying a tick of Bloodflame, which then continues powering up blood loss. So you're really double dipping, which just results in some ranged death dealing of epic proportions, and it's just so much fun. And I really wanted to tell you guys about it so you could experiment with some crossbow shenanigans and see what you can come up with. Because in a world where you can integrate any crossbow, any bolt with any buff, well, the possibilities are, I mean, not quite endless, because there is finite of those in the game, but definitely incredibly high. It's also excellent in PvP too. The pulley crossbow specifically is always good to whip out in a duel, because the triple hits do tend to cast people off guard, and if you manage to get them just as they've committed to an animation, well then you are all good. It's not exactly obliterating them, but it's very irritating to deal with, to the point that this guy actually tried to disconnect from the world because he couldn't kill me. I mean, honestly, what a soul. I'm so glad I shot him in the face so that he had to stay and die like a man. Or I guess, in his case, the small child that he is. Anyway, no, I joke, but I do think it's funny that this was so irritating to this person, they tried to actually leave. Oh, so, of course, I wanted to choose a bolt that wasn't annoying to keep stock of, because, let's be honest, we don't run around gathering, we don't want to craft, and lucky us, bleed bolts are infinitely viable, and bleed is ridiculously powerful. Too ridiculously powerful, but that's not for now. So you can go to the imprisoned merchant in Mogwyn's Blood Palace. It's in the dark, cavey, catacomby area, and he will sell you infinite bleed bolts, which is just wonderful. Keep that supply going. Obviously, we get Bloodflame from the Skyrim near the Rose Church in Luania, and really any weapon works, right? You could actually have a useful weapon instead of the piddly dagger I went with just to show the theory, but yeah, choose your weapon, apply your Bloodflame, and start popping off shots. So in terms of the build, because crossbows don't scale, you just get the minimum stats, and then I've pumped Faith so that when I Bloodflame, I get an actual decent amount of fire damage with my Erdtree Seal that I have chosen to make this work as well as it can. Then we have the White Mask for a little bit to bleed, extra 10% damage when it happens, and talisman-wise we have, of course, Arrow's Reach and Sting, which is got from the Storm Gate and the little tower in Caelid respectively for increased damage on bolts and increased effective range. Bloodlord's Talisman from the Lanedale Catacombs for an extra 10% damage when blood proc does happen, and then the Fire Scorpion from the fort in Mount Gelmir for an extra 12% fire damage, as again we're adding fire damage as well as bleed buildup to these already bleed buildup bolts. And then in the Wondrous Physic we do indeed have extra fire damage again. The second slot is really very much up to you. So yeah, not a crazy build, a nice fairly standard loadout for a crossbow with an extra bit of fire and blood thrown in, and it all comes together to make a very, very satisfying experience where you can properly use a crossbow to actually do meaningful, nice damage. And of course, in the world where you get this ranged bleed buildup, I mean, that's fantastic, and it really is long range. You can pepper bosses and players from miles away and start absolutely chewing through their health. The only downside is the range for the White Mask and Bloodlord's Talisman is quite short, so if you're not near them when it happens, you won't get the buff, so perhaps you could swap the Talisman out for something else, but there isn't really anything else that gives it a direct, bigger damage increase. I tried Rotten Winged, but even with the triple shot, it just doesn't happen on ranged weapons, which is to be expected, but that would have been a nice little bonus. In any case, yeah, enjoy! Crossbows take on weapon buffs, and because of that, you could do some really fun, powerful, but not too powerful stuff, like Mega Bloodflame Double Dip Bleed of bleed. I ran out of cool ways to describe this. I'm so sorry. Like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more so you don't miss future builds, tips, tricks, guides, witty bits, all that good stuff. Consider supporting the future of this channel on Patreon down below. It does keep us going and it does mean the world. Until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.